Good morning. Thanks for getting up early. When you do a presentation at 8 o'clock on the last morning, you're never quite sure who's showing up. And I have some stiff competition this morning with Ian Bird and Brian Housen both presenting this morning. So I am honored to have you with me this morning. My name's Lynette Breedlove. I am the director of the Gatton Academy of Mathematics and Science in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We are a residential STEM high school located on a university campus. So our students are juniors and seniors in high school who come from across the Commonwealth of Kentucky to live in our residence hall and go to college full-time as they finish their last 2 years of high school. So all the courses they take with us count towards their finishing Kentucky State graduation requirements, although they do far more than those. They graduate with at least 60 hours of college credit and then go on to college after that. It is an amazing opportunity for kids to have the lid taken off of their academics, so they can take as much math and science. They also take their English credits there and whatever else they need in a university. They have access to undergraduate research and high-level mentors. And then our staff, since we don't have instructional staff, focus wholly on meeting their social-emotional needs and helping them learn to transition to college. For the most part, we do a lot of support when the kids don't make an A for the first time in their lives. And we have 2 full-time counselors, licensed professional counselors on staff to help them through that. Because, really bright kids have often not been very challenged before because it's really hard to challenge them. And suddenly they're 2 years ahead in a university. There's a lot to adjust to. So this is what our school looks like in the fall. I moved to 4 seasons. I've grown up in Houston, and I've only been in Kentucky about 2.5 years. I have now shoveled snow, not something a Houstonian ever did before. But it's a pretty place to live and an amazing school. We are 10 years old. This is our 10th year. It's my 3rd year there as the director. But we're based in large part on the structure of the Texas Academy of Mathematics and Science. TAMS has been around for over 20 years. Very similar program at the University of North Texas. They have a residence hall. The students are wholly integrated into UNT for all of their academics. And they can do extracurriculars as part of UNT. But TAMS staff provide their social-emotional support. TAMS is larger than we are. Texas is a little bigger than Kentucky. And so they have about 400 students. And students apply as sophomores. So if you have a student who is very interested in math and science and you know that your school district's really going to struggle in challenging them, TAMS is a place to look. And it's a place kids should start looking when they're in middle school. So they can be planning for what math they want to take. They need to be preparing for SAT and ACT because it's a competitive entrance program. And it's something it takes parents a little while to think about. But it's a great place for kids who love math and science. And a lot of school districts, unfortunately, in Texas don't tell kids about it because you lose their ADA money and you lose their test scores. But we're really about what's right for our kids, not keeping their test scores. So it is an opportunity for the right kid. It's an amazing opportunity. But they need to be ready to live away from home and be independent. For me, it's an amazing place to be as someone who has loved gifted education and has been focused on that for the majority of my career. I am a Texan, so I told you I'm from Houston. I previously worked in Spring Branch ISD. I was the director of advanced academics and secondary counselors there for a number of years, and we opened a school for highly gifted kids there. I was in Fort Bend before that and Lamar Consolidated before that. So I am a Houstonian. This move to Kentucky was quite a leap. But it's really fun to be really close to gifted kids again. So I had lost that. So today we're talking about the intensity of gifted kids. And let me tell you, when you live in a building where 200 of them live every day, you get to see a lot of intensity, especially when they break up with one another. It's kind of an interesting experience. So I want you to take a moment, get to know the people at your table, talk about Movies, TV programs, and books that highlight gifted people. That's certainly a topic that is popular in movies and TV today. So see if you can come up with at least 10 different books, TV shows, or movies that feature gifted characters. Go. That's a good one. Dead Poets Society? Yeah, but you got a good list. Okay, what do you have on your list? Big Bang Theory. Big Hero 6. I know. What? Criminal Minds. What? Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures. And it's coming out soon. We'll have to watch for that. Bones. Scorpion. Harry Potter. The Imitation Game. I heard lots of people mention that as I was walking around. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Meet the Robinsons. This Is Us. Yeah, This Is Us is... Yeah, and they recently had an episode about deciding whether their child was going to go to a special school because of his abilities or not. That was an interesting episode. October Sky. I know. Okay, we're really into movies and TV this morning. How about Olivia? Right? Our gifted pig, who exemplifies every overexcitability that I'm going to talk about later. She has them all. Good Will Hunting. Yeah. Big Bang. Verity. About the snake who has abilities everybody else doesn't have and doesn't want to lose those. A Beautiful Mind. October Sky, you named. About Matilda. That's a real Matilda fan. There are a lot of books I really like. I'm not sure I've ever liked one so much I need a tattoo of it. But that's commitment. I know, like I am a huge I have a wand from, Harry Potter land, but oh, you have a whole collection of wands. Oh, you got me beat. You win. But no Harry Potter tattoo yet, huh? The Boy Who Played with Fusion, about a teenager who built a nuclear reactor in his backyard. Not a good idea, but interesting and has some, it's a true story, so that's a good thing for kids to read. Lots of things about Bobby Fischer, right? That's a popular topic. Movies and books. Scorpion we named. Sherlock. Yeah. Elementary, much like Sherlock, right? So there are tons of things in the media and other sources about that feature gifted characters, and often exceptionally gifted characters. So what characteristics are highlighted in those? What are the characteristics that are highlighted and that tend to be displayed more often than not across all of those shows? And what are the messages that sends to people, both people who are gifted and people who are not gifted? So, do those help other people see through the eyes of a gifted person? What do you think? It depends. All right. Or do they show okay, everybody's like, oh yeah, lots of stereotyping. Yeah. So what are some of the stereotypes that are reinforced through those shows? Social awkwardness, quirky, high intelligence, single, really narrow focus, right? difficulty with relationships, perfectionism. Oh, they always get it right. Eventually, yes. So almost all of those shows are about problem solving, right? Where they have to figure something out. Several of them have a journey, right? A lot of the crime kind of shows, they don't get it right in the beginning. It takes them a while to figure that out, and it shows that process along the way. They certainly demonstrate, there aren't very many shows that show a gifted character who interacts with other people perfectly fine and leads a very nice, happy, normal life. Of course, that's probably not what TV's about. I don't know, that would be so entertaining to people to just watch happy, normal every day. Although I would say maybe This Is Us, the gifted stuff's a little more subtle than some of the other shows that are out there right now. When Scorpion first came out, in working with highly gifted kids, there were kids who were so excited about the show because they really related to the characters. Because there's such a range of talent there, there were characters kids identified with. But then the science was so bad that the kids couldn't keep watching it because it was so unrealistic. They were like, what? That's not real. Like, you can't do that. So it ended up losing some of that audience, which I think is funny. It couldn't be, accurate and portray the characters at the same time. They have very high standards. But there's a new movie coming out about giftedness, and so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. So using books and movies to help people deal with things before they happen is called bibliotherapy, movies, cinema therapy. Therapists do this once people have issues, but you can help students kind of preempt an experience by sharing a book or a movie and then talking through it with the student. So if I read a book and I see an issue that that the character in the book has, then I can think about how I might handle that situation before it's presented to me. So teachers can help students sort of preventatively by finding books or movies that are appropriate and then having discussions about how would you handle that situation. What are the difficult things? What were the hard choices that people had to make, and would you make those same choices? I mean, if you just gave them the book, that's better than nothing. But it comes from the discussion and the thoughtful analysis that really helps them prepare. And gifted kids, much like it's portrayed, a lot of kids, they're very intense, and they have very intense experiences. So the more we can prepare them for what those intense experiences might be like and how they might handle some of them before they get there can be really beneficial. And you don't need any great training to be able to do it in a preventative or sort of predictive kind of a way. So if you ever have seen me present before, I'm sure you've heard me do these 4 key things. For me, this is how I explain how gifted people are different than other people and how everyone doesn't have the potential to be gifted and talented. When I first started teaching gifted kids, you'd meet people. What do you do? Oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, that's wonderful. Who do you teach? I teach gifted kids. Oh, I think everybody's gifted at something. Don't you? No. But it took me a while to figure out how to explain that without just saying, no. I don't think everyone has the potential to be an Olympic athlete, a professional athlete, a varsity athlete. I mean, we don't seem to expect that. But we expect everybody should be cognitively gifted at something. No, but gifts is our colloquial term for strengths. Michael Clay Thompson had a great article in a keynote speech where he talked about, and he's very much a grammar guy, he talked about gifts versus gifted and talented. Gifts meaning strengths. Every child has strengths. Every child is an important part of our community, has a place to contribute. Every child is a gift to their family. Every child is important. Gifted and talented is a professional term that refers to a small portion of the population. And that's separate. So every child doesn't have the potential to do calculus in middle school or in 9th grade or in 10th grade. Every child isn't reading 2 or 3 grade levels ahead. Gifted and talented people come with some equipment that everyone else doesn't come with. That equipment has to be developed in an environment that supports it. And then the kid has to have some personality characteristics that go along with that so that all of that equipment gets developed to the highest level it can. So there are a lot of pieces that go into that. There are people who have athletic talent who don't like sports. So they never become great athletes. Or they're talented in a sport that's not popular in their culture, right? The same kinds of things can happen with intellectual giftedness. But it starts with some ability and then some perseverance and passion in that area. There are kids we know who are amazing at math and don't like it. That probably won't be a good career for them. But there may be ways to take that ability and channel it into another area where they can build on that. And that happens in science and sometimes in art or music. We have a grand piano in the lobby of our school. And many of our students, all who qualified to attend our school based on their advanced math and science scores, are very musically talented. The piano is being played all the time. Unfortunately, it's in like a marble lobby, and that combination is a little overwhelming when you hear the same, when someone's working on a piece and you get to hear the same section a lot. But good for them to have that perseverance. So the first way I think gifted kids are different than others, and there's research to support, is their development pattern is different than other people's. They are asynchronous in their development. So on my chart here, P is physical, C is cognitive, S is social, and E is emotional. And in most people, those 4 areas of development move at about the same pace. They're intertwined in how they develop. So they move together. You know what to expect of a student when they're 5, physically, how they interact with others, cognitively, what they can do. Same of a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. Students who are above average or high achievers tend to have all of those things moving at a little faster rate than their age peers. They look older, they sound like they're older when they talk, they hang out with a little older person. Everything about them is very even developed, but it's more advanced than their peers. Gifted kids' development is all over the chart. Each gifted kid has their own pattern of asynchronous development. And in the research, we don't all agree on the definition of giftedness, and we don't all agree on all the components, but everyone agrees on this asynchronous development pattern. This is a hallmark of gifted people. So in schools, we are looking for cognitively gifted kids. So we're testing for this. If I were looking for potential Olympic athletes, we'd be looking for this. Now, we probably wouldn't do that with a cognitive abilities test, right? We would do that in some other way. And gifted athletes also have asynchronous development. Their pattern just looks different than other people's. So they have some of the same experiences that cognitively gifted kids do because they are out of sync with everybody else. And being out of sync in a system that is designed for the majority, which makes sense, but where everything is based on your age, can be really difficult for them, right? So if your thinking is here, we need to figure out a way in school to get you the challenge there. And your social and emotional development will never catch up to your cognitive development. So a lot of times we won't accelerate kids because we say they're immature or socially and emotionally they're not ready. Well, socially and emotionally, they're never going to be on the same level unless we stunt their cognitive growth. That might not be our goal at school. And so a lot of times when we accelerate kids, we find that now they're in a place they at least fit in one way, in a really important way to them, and the other things work themselves out. They tend to interact socially better with people who are cognitive equals than they do being surrounded by people who don't think like they do, and I don't understand why you don't get what I'm saying, and you don't get why I can't explain what I'm trying to say. And so that disconnect is really hard to navigate. The second way I think gifted people are different than others is how gifted they are. We tend to talk about gifted as one group, like everybody has this one set of characteristics. And gifted people have some of the characteristics I talk about and some don't. But each kid has their own little combination of that. So as Patty Gatto-Walden would say, individuality trumps what I'm talking about in generalizations, right? So if you were going through a checklist, you wouldn't say, oh, you're not gifted because you don't have this fourth thing, okay? But in general, 100 is an IQ that's average. So our standards, our textbooks, grade level, all is designed to be at about 100. At 115, that's where our AP program's designed. It's college courses in high school. The average IQ of college-going folks several years ago was 115. I need to get more research on that. But that's kind of where we're aiming for. Now, that doesn't mean other kids can't be successful in AP, right? Because we have open access. We do a lot to support anyone who's willing to do that work and take on that challenge. So in a lot of the literature, 130 is where we start talking about an IQ of giftedness. And on tests, we use the standard error of measure. So it's always, about 130, right? But that's the same distance from average as 70. And when you are that far from where the system is set up, you need some adjustment to the system to meet your needs. So at a 70 IQ, in special education, there's a whole set of services that are designed to help meet students' needs. Often, at the opposite end, at the 130 end, we have one very narrow GT program that we think should just meet everybody's needs. And we're not very good at diagnosing within that group what people need. Because if I have an IQ of 145, that's as different from 130 as an IQ of 55 is from 70. And we notice a significant difference there on one end of the spectrum, but we don't always on the other. I had a professor, and I can't remember who it was, which is, I think I was just going, oh, my mind was so blown when they said it that I can remember who it was. They made a point of saying that, so most of us have an IQ of 100. Think about how you interact with people who have an IQ of 70 or below. There's some difference in how you communicate with people and how you listen and what that interaction is like. Well, so 100 is the same distance from 70 as 130 is from 100. So it's like, if you have an IQ of 130, it's like the whole world has an IQ of 70. That could be frustrating. If you have an IQ of 145, it's like the whole world has an IQ of 55. And then we say you don't have good social skills. It's you're using your social skills all the time, and you always feel off. You never know why. You can never quite figure out how to communicate with people. Why aren't there more people like me? What's wrong with me? Because I'm different than most people I interact with. Typically, if you want someone to learn good social skills, you do it with people like you, and then you generalize those skills and use them with people who are different than you. But if you're always the odd, different person out, it's hard to develop those skills. And so when we group gifted kids together, you give them the opportunity to figure out how to do that, and then take that outside of that experience. We have gifted kids who come to our school who are odd and awkward. They have been the only kid like them for 14 years. Then they come to our school, and at first they're in their rooms a lot. And then they figure out that I can have a conversation with almost anybody here about anything I want, and it's not weird. And I can be as introverted as I want, and that's fine. And we see kids who go from being standoffish and quiet and really apart to being in the middle of the dance floor at prom after 2 years. And that is a remarkable change. And our students talk about that experience and the experience of being in a community of others far more than they talk about the college classes that they took with us. So that sense of belonging and that opportunity of some sameness, even though they come from across the state, have very different backgrounds and political and religious views, that sameness in intellectual ability and desire to learn makes all the difference for them. So the third way gifted people tend to be different than others is they're intrinsically motivated. They have a need to know things. It might not be what you're teaching, though. And getting them to do things that they don't have the drive to do is quite the challenge. High achievers care about grades. And there are gifted kids who are high achievers. A lot of firstborn kids, particularly girls, figure out what you want, they give it to you, and they feel great about it. Secondborn kids and boys, not so good at that. And so when they don't see true value in the assignment, or they are not connected with you as a teacher, they don't do it. They start out doing the work in elementary school, but as they get older, they stop. They lose faith in the system. Why do I have to prove again that I know this? You teachers just need to talk, because I'm done. And by the time you get to middle school, they really begin to separate what work they feel has value from schoolwork. We have kids who write books outside of school, who do cancer research outside of school, who do robotics outside of school, who are coding games and apps. Why do they have to do that outside of school? And when you can build rapport with them, and you only have a few days at the beginning of school to show that you see them, who they are, and you're willing to honor who they are and give them credit for what they already know, then you'll get buy-in from them. And if they connect with you, they'll do things they don't want to do because they know you have to have those grades and they feel sorry for you. But that connection is what makes all the difference. So you'll see gifted kids who have A's in classes they like and A's with teachers they love and barely making it in everything else. Being the parent of one of those, it is a nightmare. Because there are no carrots, really, that you can use to help them. It has to be what's in it for them to make it worthwhile to do, and they don't like playing games. That's a manipulation, that's a game, that's not important to me. And I can tell you there's a college for everyone. Even that kid who makes A's in things they love and C's in things they don't. Or D's in things they don't. There's a college for those kids too. I promise. Fourth way gifted kids are different than others is they tend to be introverted. They get energy from being alone. It isn't that they're shy. It isn't that they don't like interacting with other people. It's that saps their energy. So kids high in this area go home at the end of the day and cannot have a conversation with anyone. They go to their room, close the door, take an hour or so to recharge, listen to music, read a book, YouTube, whatever. And then after an hour or so, now I can come out and have a conversation with you about how was my day and what did I do. But I can't do that right away. You may have a spouse who comes home at the end and is not a person to be around for a while. Same thing. These characteristics never go away. You're gifted forever. Some people learn coping skills along the way, and our goal is to help our kids learn to deal with their intensities and their experiences in positive ways and in healthy ways. So I know I'm an introvert. So when I go to conferences like this and I'm around people all day long, I enjoy that and I love that. But I need my hotel room alone so I can close the door and not have to be nice to anybody. One time I didn't do that. I almost got divorced after I got home. So my husband didn't appreciate my wanting alone time then. He thought I'd already had it, right? You have to know that about yourself and know that about your kids. So if you teach middle or high school and you teach later periods in the day, your kids have not had a break from the masses all day long. And then you want them to work in a group. And they don't have the energy left to do it. So that's when they want to work by them. Can I please just work by myself? Can I work with just one other person? Because they don't have the energy to give to make that group work. Now, you probably need them to do group work, and it would be good for them to do. Not all the time, but some of the time. So find a way to give them a break so that they can recharge a little bit before the group work comes. Tell them, we're going to do group work in about 10 minutes. So anyone who needs time to read the material before we're going to get started, do you need to run to the library? Like, let the kids you know are introverted find a way to take a break to recharge so that then they have a little bit of energy to give to that group. And you'll find that they work a little bit better because you've figured out and honored who they are. So those 4 keys to giftedness, to me, explain how gifted people are different than others, and they give us insight in what we need to do in our classrooms and at home to meet their needs. You know Maslow and his hierarchy, right? We have to meet all the very basic things at the bottom before you can get to the top. One of those things is friendship and belonging. Gifted kids don't need 15 friends. They need 1 or 2 who really get them. And the higher the level of giftedness, the harder that is to find. And the more that kids sort of separate who their acquaintances are and who their friends are. Even at young ages, they'll say, well, this is my friend, and those are the kids I play with, right? Because they know who they have a deep connection with. And so finding friends and belonging is important, and they have to do that before they can get higher on Maslow's. So unless they feel that they're in a safe, comfortable environment to be who they are, they're not learning as much as they could in developing their intellect. But if you're not honoring their intellect, you're not meeting their social emotional needs either. We have to do both at the same time. It's not something you can choose one or the other. Because if one's not right, the other one's not going to be right. So, gifted kids have different kinds of friends than others. Think about how kids meet friends. They have a multi-age group in the neighborhood that they might play with. But other than that, in their lives, they're always grouped by age. Are all of your friends within 1 year of your age? Probably not. You might not even know. I have a 9-year-old. I have a lot of gray hair. I have friends who are not my same age, who also have 9-year-olds. They're a lot younger than I am. You only find out like at birthdays when they're turning, 30-something, and you're not. But we have friends that are interested in what we're interested in our religious communities, in our neighborhood. The friends that are within 1 year of our age are the people we went to school with. Well, kids don't have the opportunity to have that range of friends when they're younger. So parents of gifted kids have to be more purposeful about connecting them in different ways. They need intellectual peers. Those may be older. They need interest peers. Those might be older too. Then they need friends that they play on the t-ball team with, or that they play fun, fair, positive soccer with, or whatever. So you need friends for all the different parts of you, and you just have to be more purposeful about finding that for gifted kids. And that they're going to have 1 or 2 really good friends, 3 really good friends, and that's going to be enough for them. And sometimes we think they should be playing with everybody else on the playground, when really they want to play with one person on the playground, and that's okay. So Kazimierz Dabrowski was a Polish psychologist and psychiatrist who was really interested in personality development. So in experiencing multiple concentration camps during World War II, he saw people who sacrificed everything to help others, and then others who did everything to save themselves no matter what it did to other people. And he wondered and was really fascinated about how do people develop to one level versus another level where they would sacrifice everything. And he developed a personality theory called the theory of positive disintegration. Basically, you have to break down your personality as you cope with discrepancies between how things should be and how things are in the real world and in yourself. And then as you work through that, you get to higher levels. As he was working on his personality theory, he studied a lot of eminent people. And he found that they have big responses to small stimuli. And that was something that was common across that group. Whether it was intellectually gifted people or artistically gifted people, he found they tend to have extra energy, and he categorized it in 5 areas. It's like having too much of a good thing. They're too sensitive to stimuli, and then they have big reactions. Sharon Lynn says it's like they have a bigger antenna than everybody else. They take in things nobody else notices in ways that are wonderful and painful at the same time. So the first area is the intellectual overexcitability, and that's the stereotypical gifted kid. I need to know things. I will ask you 1,000,000 questions. There's a new ad for that Google, kind of like the Echo thing, right? And the dad's reading a book to his daughter about the oceans, and he only gets through the first line over and over and over. She says, well, how big is a blue whale? And then she says, what sound do blue whales make? So each time he Googles the answer to that, and it's like he's never getting through that book. That's what the kids are like. They make you crazy. You're like, please, I just need a moment. Stop asking me questions. Questions are a good thing. And that's what's happening in their mind, is this 1,000,000 questions, which is a good thing, even though it's exhausting. They do a lot of moral thinking, a lot of what if. Why are things the way they are? Why aren't they in a way that would be good for everybody? So they think about really big issues at a really high level. And they tend to be critical of others. It isn't because they don't like other people. It's that they have a need for depth and they have a need for correctness. So if you say something as their teacher that isn't correct, they're going to tell you because they thought you wanted to know. They would want to know if they were wrong. They're just not wrong very often. And so sometimes you have to teach them how to do that in a polite way, or maybe not in front of everybody else, or that kind of thing. And as a teacher of gifted students, you have to be okay with being wrong really publicly, right? You just do. So helping them understand what that feels like when every time you point out something I do wrong, how does that feel if I do that to you? And when they start separating, oh, that might not feel good. Gifted kids tend to be very empathetic. And once they see how that feels, and you give them some tools to turn that into a different direction, that can be helpful. Perhaps instead of going around saying what's wrong with everyone's drawing, you could say one thing that's accurate about everyone's drawing. That would make people feel better, and that would buy you some social capital. But that's something sometimes you have to point out to a gifted student. Kids who are really interested in world issues and concerned about that need an opportunity to act on that. And that builds a number of skills. It reinforces their abilities, and it also demonstrates how important it is to use their abilities in positive ways. Not because they owe that to the world, but because if they're going to pick how they're going to use their abilities, we want it to be in beneficial ways, right? So that can be helpful. You have an assessment in your handout, but for the sake of time, we're not going to do it. I'm just going to tell you about it. There's a book. Do I have the picture? Perfectionism, What's Bad About Being Too Good. It's a little bit older, but I think it's a fabulous publication. And you have an assessment in your handout that came from there. It's just a quick assessment to see, are you too good to be true? Or you're barely breathing because you're not concerned about things enough, or somewhere healthy in the middle. Kids who are high intellectually and high emotionally tend to be perfectionists, and they're hard on themselves because they want to get things just right. It has to be just right, just right. And that can get to a point that's unhealthy. The pursuit of excellence is important. That's how you become a great researcher. That's how you become an Olympic athlete. A pursuit of excellence is how you do things really well. But if it keeps you up all night, if it makes you use drugs that are enhancing your performance, if it gets you to where you can't produce anything at all, or it can become very unhealthy. And we want kids to understand that line between pursuit of excellence and perfectionism. Some of that is you're being okay being called out making a mistake in front of everybody. Mistakes are how we learn, and we tell kids that all the time, but then we don't make mistakes in front of them. So what message are they really going to get? When they take a pre-assessment, a pre-test on spelling, and you say they have to get 100, but don't worry, you don't have to be perfect. What message did they get? Well, you do have to be perfect. I have to make 100. I'm not allowed to miss anything. And so we have to watch that we don't send them mixed messages. Sometimes in our effort to motivate kids who tend to be less motivated, we send, the wrong kids get that message. It's like group punishment. Like the kid who did it, if I make a statement to everyone, we're not doing a good job about getting out of here on time. Like the kid who's the problem doesn't know you're talking to them. And the kid who isn't the problem is like, oh my gosh, I haven't been doing what I was supposed to be doing. You're like, yeah, no, you were fine. I wasn't talking to you, right? So we do that motivating kind of stuff in the classroom, and the kid who gets the message you need to work harder is the kid who already was doing fine and takes that as, oh my gosh, I have to work 10 times harder than I am now, and it puts them over that edge. Focusing on effort, that growth mindset, is really important for perfectionists and for gifted kids. Talking a lot about effort. How hard did you work for this? Kids don't earn a place in gifted in their GT classroom. They qualified it based on diagnosed needs. And the kids who aren't there didn't not earn it. Their brain's just different. So we need to talk to kids about how they got in that GT program. It's not an accomplishment. We also need to talk to their parents about that. This isn't something that we brag about because you didn't earn it. We brag about things we worked really hard for and accomplished through hard work, not things we got with no effort. And often are using grades all the time. That gets confused because a lot of our kids get really good grades with no effort at all. If kids are making hundreds all the time, where's their struggle to learn? And that doesn't show that they're being challenged. So it's important for parents and kids to see that effort is really what matters there. Okay? And saying, this should be easy for you, is always something you should never say to gifted kids. Because then when they are struggling, you're telling them they shouldn't be struggling. Right? And we want gifted kids to learn to struggle. Otherwise, when they go to Harvard and they hit that wall for the first time, they come home. Mm-hmm. Right.
And she's a gifted kid, but she's not super high gifted, and so she is struggling, trying to get the parents to because the kid's freaking out.
Right.
Yeah, we
had that too.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question. So how do you help a parent who's very concerned about that 89 versus 90? And the parent only sees the number as the important thing. How do you help parents understand that effort is important? First, I always did presentations with parents, and like this kind of presentation I do with parents a lot, and I talk about if your child doesn't struggle, they don't develop grit, and they don't learn to persevere through struggle. And when they're not in your house anymore, you need them to be able to persevere and make it through that struggle. You do not want your child living at home for the rest of their lives. And that's what happens when you save them from struggle repeatedly. And actually, that's a whole phenomenon right now, right? And I have also said to parents repeatedly, if your child's always making hundreds, they're not being challenged. So you need to talk to the teacher about your child getting more challenge. Nobody cares what their report card looks like in elementary school, really, or middle school. That's not on their record when they apply to college or for a job. And an employer or a college is going to look for a kid who solves problems on their own, because a college doesn't want to talk to you, and they want to see a student solving their own problems. So long term, you've got to let your kid make that 89 and work a little bit harder. So it's just a matter of building that relationship and continuing to talk about the effort piece. So when they talk about, how can she go from an 89 to a 90, you talk about effort pieces. Well, she worked really hard to get here, and I'm really proud of her for how hard she worked, and describe the work you saw the child do. And then is there another piece of study that would let them get over that hump? I kind of had the reverse experience. My child had like an 80 on social studies on his report card, and I thought, boy, there's some things he doesn't understand. I need to figure out what he doesn't understand so I can do some reteaching at home. And she only thought I was talking about his grade. She's like, oh, well, I didn't have this grade in it. And then she sent me another piece of paper that said, okay, it's going to be an A now. I was like, no, I don't care about the grade. I care about, but her experience had been most parents cared about the grade. And that's not a quick fix. It is something I spent lots of years doing presentations over and over again about how important challenge is for smart kids. And slowly it started sinking in. And I would have parents say, oh, my kids never made less than 100. I know they're not getting enough. And when you start hearing that, you go, success. We're making progress. The second overexcitability is imaginational overexcitability. These are kids who have a really rich dream life. They envision things other people don't see. Those are kids who look like they check out in class. They kind of have gone off into their heads because that's way more exciting than what you're doing. But they are listening to you at the same time. So when you say something novel, something they haven't heard before, something they didn't know, they check in, store that away, and then go back to whatever was happening in their head, right? And that they can do that. Most kids cannot do that. These kids can. But being able to imagine all kinds of things when you also understand things above your age, but you only have the life experience of a younger person, can be really confusing and scary. And so sometimes kids have trouble sleeping. They have really realistic, scary dreams. So parents have to do some pre-sleep routines that are very positive and calming to help kids have positive imagery before they go to sleep to get rid of some of the negative stuff. They need a place to dump all their ideas. So an idea journal, a sketch pad, some way that they can capture their ideas, and that gives them credit and credence, and they're important. But kids don't have to walk around with them in their heads, and they don't have to tell you all of them, right? Make your worrier a warrior. Gifted kids, because of their intellectual ability and their intensities, they tend to have higher rates of anxiety than other people. So there are lots of kids who are worriers. Nail biting, lots of kind of anxious behaviors because it's a thinking thing. It's really overthinking problems in a sort of bigger way. And this book, Dan Peters, he also has sort of a series on YouTube. It's directed to parents about how to talk to their kids about worry and externalizing the worry, and teaching them to use their analytical skills to interrupt their thinking to stop the worry and the emotional response you have when you start thinking down that anxiety path. And I have found it to be really helpful with my own child, and I've had a number of parents talk about how it's been beneficial too. So that's a good resource. Dan Peters. The emotional overexcitability, the third one. Gifted kids wear their hearts on their sleeves. They have high highs and low lows. They're like teenagers when they're in elementary school. Then they really become teenagers, and everything's more intense. Really deep feelings. They get strong attachments to people, places, and things. Change is really hard. These are those kids who have their stuffed animals that have personalities, even when they're like in middle school. But they know that's not okay anymore, so they hide them when their friends come over, right? And then they get them all back out. If you move from one place to another, that's a big deal. Pets, you have to have a funeral service for the goldfish when the goldfish dies. Really intense connections. They have physical symptoms to their emotional feelings. So stomach aches, they might actually get sick to their stomach. They might, kids who have bigger physical reactions to their emotions. And you have to teach them about that. So all of a sudden you feel sick to your stomach. Are you really sick, or are you worried about something? Is that a symptom that you're worried or overthinking? Well then let's address the worry and overthinking. And how do you use some things to calm yourself down and stop that those thinking loops when kids get really emotional? You also want them to help learn their triggers. So sometimes you'll have kids have a huge meltdown in your class. You can't talk to them during the meltdown, and you need them to have some time after the meltdown to calm down. Then go back and talk to them about what was happening before the meltdown so that you can help them start identifying those triggers earlier and then use some calming techniques to ward it off. Oh, I'm starting to feel anxious and worried, or I'm going to go to a movie and it's about something sad. How do I start warding off that feeling? Or am I just not going to go to sad movies with anyone but my parents, so then I can just bawl and it'll be fine, right? Or with your gifted friends. And that's fine. But knowing those characteristics about yourself is important to help you know what's happening and interpret situations. And sometimes kids have really big reactions, and that sends a message to people, not always the right message. So helping them know what are the messages that you're portraying when you have this big reaction, then you don't know why that other person's upset. Well, when you blow up, the other person takes it personally. So having a conversation about how you navigate that can be really helpful. Because of time, in your handout, you have a couple of tools about decision-making, paired comparison, 2 different charts. Because of their emotionality, gifted kids sometimes are terrible decision makers. They can't make a decision. There are too many choices, and like trying to decide where you're going to college. Oh my gosh, it's going to make the decision for the rest of my life. This affects everything else. Well, it's one path. And if you never make a decision, then you're really in trouble. So helping them use a tool like a decision-making paired comparison or a decision-making chart helps them take the emotion out and use their analytical skills first. Use your analytical skills first to narrow down your choices, and then begin to make an informed decision. And in the tools, you have a really simple form and a really complicated form. Everyone has to start with the simple form, no matter how old they are. Otherwise, it gets too difficult. Sorry, I go through a whole process, but we have like 3 minutes. You have an activity, and I'll post the answers on the app, so you'll have the answers to this. This is an interesting activity for kids to do. Many gifted kids are good at a lot of things, and so they have trouble choosing what they're going to do with their career path. All of the people on this page here and on your activity are doing things they didn't major in college. College is like a means to an end. It doesn't mean you're going to do that thing your whole life. And so kids sometimes need to know that Thurgood Marshall was a dentist. What? Like, it doesn't have to be, this is part of your path of life. There's not one place that you're going to get that you're going to stop. It's just the journey. So helping kids see that can sometimes take the stress and the worry out of some of their decision-making about things in the end. I love this cartoon. I want to do so many things when I grow up, right? I don't know how I'll get them all done. But you'll have a path, right? And you'll be able to do one thing after another. A lot of gifted people work in a career 3 to 5 years, get bored, change, do something else. 3 to 5 years, get really good at that, get bored, change again. And it might be within the same career field, or it may change paths altogether, but the skills and knowledge they acquire along the way makes them successful in the next thing. So, and lots of people are changing careers a lot now and doing things for shorter periods of time. Gifted people have always done that. Now it's just becoming more mainstream. 4th overexcitability, the sensual overexcitability. Gifted kids, this is a heightened any of the 5 senses. So they taste things other people don't taste. How things feel is really important, like their clothes don't feel right. They don't like the seams in their socks, the tags in their clothes. They're also the kids, like those kindergartners that rub teachers' legs. They're high in that area too. They're kids who wear things. They're picky eaters because they are particular about how things feel in their mouth. My son can tell you the instant the ham has changed, and he can tell me the difference between brands of ham and brands of cheese. It's totally annoying. But I can't win that battle. So I don't fight that battle. I've just sort of learned to ask him when the ham is not acceptable to him anymore. And then I eat it, because I can't tell the difference. But he can, so, you just learn to fight your battles. This is a picky eater dog. Yeah. No fruits and vegetables for him. Later, he gives him a piece of broccoli. He's like, no broccoli. I agree, no broccoli. Kids high in this area need to know about this sensitivity about them, and your knowing about it in your classroom can help you adjust your classroom a little bit. It's not helpful if you wear a lotion that you think smells great and the kid can't, think of anything but how awful that lotion smells. They can't get beyond that. You're like, well, just get used to it. That's not going to happen, right? Or it could be they think you smell really good. You might not want that either. So these are things that you just have to help kids get used to. Maybe there are things you can adjust, maybe you can't. Maybe there's a clock that ticks in your classroom. Some of those electric ones hum and you can hear every time they move. Sometimes the lights flicker. Kids who have sensory sensory processing disorders, who get really overwhelmed sensory-wise, gifted kids look like that. But it isn't really a processing disorder. It's just part of their heightened sensitivity in taking things in. But you would mediate it in much the same way. You would adjust things in the classroom. Maybe they need sound dampening headphones when they really need to focus and things like that. On all of these slides, I've had talk about the overexcitabilities. Kids need to know that this is a characteristic of gifted people, and it's normal in gifted people. When I talked about this with the gifted students in my elementary pullout program, I had students going like, what? That's normal? I never told anybody that, because they thought they were weird. I'm like, nope, that's normal for a gifted person. And we know that because we go to trainings about it and the research says that, but they're not going to those trainings and they're not reading that research. So they just think they're odd because nobody else ever talked about that. So it can make a huge difference for them in how they feel about their belonging and how they might address some of those challenges for them. The last overexcitability is psychomotor overexcitability. Gifted kids have more physical energy than other people. It often looks like ADHD. This is our
Each time they ask her a question, she whines again.
Wait till she can really say something. People high in psychomotor overexcitability have fast speech often. And when they get excited about something, they talk faster and faster and faster. They skip words. I mean, they interrupt you because you're not talking fast enough and they know what you're going to say, like get there faster. Their brain is processing so fast that their body wants to keep up and they want their environment to keep up. They like fast games, fast movement. They need physical opportunities to move. That's that person who shakes their hand, taps their pencil, wiggles their leg. I mean, they're those people who are constantly fidgeting and moving. So gifted kids, they're also the people who email you at 4 a.m. in the morning because they don't need as much sleep as everybody else. Or when they're, really little, they won't take a nap and they don't need it, even though you do. I mean, it's just this extra physical energy. So helping them have opportunities to move, scheduling movement in your classroom. Middle school and high schoolers, again, they just get time to move between classes. But at least they get that. In elementary, we could be in times when they don't change classes and they're sitting for long periods. They need to move. Yoga balls in the classroom as chairs can make a huge difference. I've been in GT classrooms where every kid was on a yoga ball, then working, then thinking, then working. It'll take you some getting used to watching all those bobbing heads. But if you teach them the skills in the classroom, how to sit on them appropriately, you hold kids accountable, it can make a big difference. And you'll end up with the kids who need it using it, and the kids who don't will stop. They'll use it at first, but then it'll get old for them. There are a lot of things about how you meet the needs of gifted kids. Other people will want to try it. Great, you can try it. But then they won't like it because it isn't what they need, and they'll stop. So you don't have to do things that you say, well, this is because you're gifted, and you can't have it because you're not, which I know you don't do, but I have seen before, right? But you let everybody do it if they want to, and then they go, ooh, I don't know why they think that's fun. And you think, that's fine, I wasn't planning on your enjoying it anyway. I had something else for you, right? And so those yoga balls and things really work. They need to know when they're fidgeting what message that sends. So what are some ways you can fidget when you're having a conversation with me that doesn't look like you need to go to the bathroom, right? Or that what I'm saying isn't important. You can squeeze your toes in your shoes. Nobody can see that. You can shake your hand behind your back. Other people don't see that. So there are ways to let kids move and fidget and have that experience that doesn't send messages that they weren't intending to send. This book, the Misdiagnosis book, is a great resource for both parents and teachers. It goes over about the 5 most commonly misdiagnosed psychological disorders. We often pathologize gifted people just because they're not like everybody else. So we confuse their questioning authority and wanting to know why with oppositional defiant disorder. They're not being oppositional to be oppositional. It's just they don't agree or they want to know why you made that decision. And in the end, you can still say, I'm the parent, I'm the teacher, here's the consequence. But they need an explanation for things. And so it isn't about that. Or they look like they're bipolar because they're so emotional. But bipolar people cycle over longer periods than in a day, right? Or ADHD, which is the most common misdiagnosis. Because of how fast their brains are working, and it comes out in other ways, it looks like ADHD. But a gifted person, when they're engaged in something, can focus on it for long periods of time. Once they focus, they forget to eat, they forget to go home at the end of the day, they forget that they turned the stove on and dinner was cooking. They get so absorbed in what they're doing. And people with ADHD, while you can focus longer on things you're interested in, it isn't something you get totally absorbed in. Your body just can't do that. And so watching for those differences can help. And this book tells you, here are the characteristics of giftedness, here are the characteristics of the disorder, here's how you know if it's one or the other or both. And it's written by psychologists, so I find that really helpful. A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children, produced by the same people, the best book I know of for gifted parents of gifted kids, who probably the parents are gifted too. That's kind of how you get it. So this is another great resource as well. So, okay, take your picture. Yes, all of the resources are in the handout online, and there are websites there too.